Hi, you're watching Comic Talk. This is our pull list review for June. I'm Josh, and this is Drew.
All right, so at the end of every month, we're going to kind of go through and review our top and bottom picks for our pull list for the month. So my first top pick, and this is a mutual one, I think, for us.
This is definitely a mutual choice.
Airboy #1. I don't know if it's genius. I think it's close enough to merit the title.
It's approaching.
And really, the thing is, anything I could criticize it for, as we mentioned in previous episode, it's already criticized itself for.
Right.
So I don't really even feel like I have a place to make criticisms on that point because it's already pointed out everything that I could possibly find wrong with it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's not much to say about this one other than this is definitely a must-buy, a must-read for anybody that likes any sort of clever comics at all, anything even vaguely alternative or Indian style. They just need to pick this one up.
It's funny, it's disgusting, it's introspective, it's extrospective,
Full
if that's
of
a word.
depravity.
Full of depravity. The artwork is amazing, the coloring is amazing. Not really much else to say.
Yeah, definitely. Airboy is definitely sticking on the list. It's my top choice, I think, for the month.
For the month, definitely.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Cool. Now, coming in a close second for me is Weird World. I believe you picked this one as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
we're both on board with Weird World for a while. Maybe not quite as brilliant as Airboy, just because this is a little more by the books. Mm-hmm. But it is definitely an incredible title, in my opinion. The writing is spectacular. It's different. It's barbarians and strangeness. The art stands out immediately.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that, going back to the barbarian and stuff, that really made this a top pick for me, is that it made me a fan of the genre. Anytime anything can do that, especially something that I've had exposure to before, I mean, plenty of exposure, and none of it I really got into, and then this comes along and just totally blows me away. As Josh mentioned earlier, the artwork, don't let the cover fool you. I don't know who or why, but it's amazing. And the other thing that kind of amazed me about this comic was how much emotion they really packed into one comic. Mm-hmm. And just little narrative things. I mean, we have man versus nature, we have man versus self, we have man versus God in one issue with pictures.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, it's super heavy. And the watermelon color palette, I just keep coming back to. It's just so pretty.
Yeah, it's a beautiful comic.
Yeah, I think this is one of those comics where if it didn't have words, I would read it. If it didn't have pictures, I would read it. Mm-hmm. It's that level. Jason Aaron, well done. My third top pick for the month was Prez, and I know that you weren't the hugest fan of this one, or it was your bottom pick for that week.
Yeah, it was probably.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's super clever. It's chock full of pop culture relevance. It really makes fun of all the right things for like a young indie comic kind of reader. It touches on real political issues that I think are going on in the world, and it does it in this sort of tongue-in-cheek way, but it's also pretty powerful in that way as well. Maybe even like a political cartoon for the next generation. What did you think about it in general?
I'm still on board with Prez. Mm-hmm. I don't hate this title. It's just not quite for me. It's not quite up my alley. I'll still read it. I'm still excited to see what happens next, but it's just not a top pick for me this month. It's somewhere right in the middle of the pack, probably. My third choice was, this one's a mouthful, Giant Size, Little AVX versus Marvel. I don't know. Right? So
Close enough.
Scotty Young with cute little Marvel characters. I love the artwork in this, Scotty Young vehicle. I love the humor, the irreverence, all of the callbacks that are in this for other Marvel stuff. For the big Marvel fan, this is a lot of fun to read. It's definitely a more youth-oriented title, but in the way that I think Pixar movies are youth-oriented, or DreamWorks films. There's something for everybody in it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the points we made when we actually reviewed it, is that it's not all ages because kids will like it and you won't, but you can suffer through it. I truly believe people at any age would love this. It's cute, it's funny, the artwork is entertaining. There's a lot of verbal humor. There's a lot of physical humor. Not the strongest plot in the world, but I don't think it really matters.
There's barely plot at all.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
No. It's not a plot-driven book.
No. And that's almost harkening back to, I mean, even if you look at Bugs Bunny versus Elmer Fudd or something like that, you have this whole episode, and the plot is this hunter's trying to get this rabbit. This is definitely a callback to that sort of storytelling.
Yeah, that's a great comparison, Drew. It's very Looney Tunes-esque.
Even though I would say the artwork itself is maybe more reminiscent of modern Cartoon Network.
Powerpuff Girls.
Dexter's Lab is another good one. Yeah. All right, let's get into some of the bottom picks.
Yeah, so bottom picks this week, I think we agreed on a few, right?
We did.
And we disagreed on a few. So what was your first choice here? I think we both agreed on this one pretty strongly.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, Mark Waid. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
I think he's a fantastic writer. I never thought that I would pick up a Mark Waid book and immediately wish that I hadn't. I think it's just, and I hate to say this because Weird World, I mentioned earlier, won me over on the whole barbarian thing. This didn't win me over on the genre. I'm not even sure how you would sort of articulate what this is. Maybe like a quasi Sherlock Holmes plus the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, a little Dick Tracy vibe as well.
Yeah. British old steampunk detective.
I guess.
Maybe.
I'm not sure what they're going for here, and I don't really care to find out.
I think artwork could have saved this one for me, but it didn't.
Yeah. Just a lackluster book that I personally don't have any drive to continue with. Yeah. So I think we're both in agreement on this one. We're going to drop this from the list, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this will not be on week 1 next week.
Sorry, Justice Inc., the Avengers fans. Number 2 here at the bottom of our list. I'm surprised that we both agreed on this one.
Really?
Yeah, Detective Comics. I know you're a Batman fan.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that
As
you
are
would, to a degree.
Okay.
I don't think I'm the fan that you are of Batman. In terms of Batman fandom, I'm actually probably pretty far down the scale. I don't like a lot of Batman stuff, to be honest. For me, there's just not a lot happening in this that I feel attached to.
And while I do theoretically like the idea of Harvey Bullock as the protagonist, I don't really feel like they brought enough to it to really make me want to stick around. And I tried to sort of dissociate my opinion on this with my opinion of the issues before Convergence. Mm-hmm. I thought they were okay. They were fine. It's just always felt like the B-list Batman title. And now I'm glad that they're starting to finally sort of maybe think about what Detective Comics really is and try to carve out a niche that, the Batman Prime title, so to speak, doesn't fill. I think they still got a ways to go, though.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like the idea here. I like what they're going with. I like Harvey Bullock as a protagonist.
Really?
I like him as a lead character. I think it's a good idea. It adds some flavor to the DC stable of characters that I think was missing. DC tends to go with very, I don't want to say clean, but that's kind of the direction that DC sticks with. They more heroic characters overall. They have their dirtier, grittier stuff, but I think Harvey Bullock is a really interesting choice to lead a DC comic and get a little more grit in there, a little more of that Hellblazer type of feel to things without being fantastical. There's no real fantastical element to Harvey Bullock. He's just a guy. So I like that about it. I'm on the fence on whether or not I want to continue reading it. I'm not certain I'm ready to drop it from the pull list. I could be persuaded. But it's definitely at the bottom. How do you feel about it? Do you want to keep this on our list?
I think because 41 is such a stark departure from 39 and 40, I want to give it one more just to see how they flesh this Harvey thing out. Because like I said, on paper am a fan of the direction that they're going. I just haven't really felt compelled by any of the stories so far.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's only one issue.
Right. Okay, so Buccellato and Manapul, you got one more issue to win us over. I'm sure you're very concerned.
My next on the bottom, and I know that you're going to disagree with this, Old Man Logan #1. Let me ask, what do you think was the high point of this comic?
The overall tone. I enjoy the tone of this comic in general. The Wolverine in a Western is just compelling to me.
Mm-hmm. I would probably have to agree with you, and I think that that's what I actually don't like about it, because I find a lot of Westerns to be kind of boring.
I see.
I found this to be pretty boring. In Bendis, I think my first big exposure to Bendis was Miles Morales, Ultimate Spider-Man. And I kind of had the same problem with it. I miss the narrative boxes. It just seems like with a dialogue-only driven storyline, you're just missing this huge chunk of the medium. And
Sure.
I know, like we talked about before, like
Mm-hmm.
it has been sort of a trendy thing to not have that and let the
Right.
dialogue speak to itself. But, in 2015, I don't think it's really necessary anymore. I think everybody needs to use everything that's available to them. Use your resources. Really flex your muscles as a writer, so to speak. I guess you can make an argument for minimalism. I just don't dig it. I thought it was boring.
Interestingly enough, on that topic, I've always considered Bendis to be one of the guys that was at the forefront of this movement of moving towards all dialogue and removing the thought panels and the thought bubbles.
Right.
That sort of writing. He's always been one of the guys that people look to with the expositionary dialogue and the people actually make jokes, about Bendis and the fact that half of his pages are just speech bubbles. There's no room for the artist to even work in some of his comics, it seems. So because he's sort of the trendsetter in that over the years, I tend to give him a little more leeway with it because he's not a guy sort of following the lead of others and doing what's trendy. He's the guy that set the trend in the first place, I feel.
Right. He's not making a statement, so to speak. He's just doing things the way that
he's doing Bendis.
Right.
Yeah, and I have a lot of love for Bendis for the Ultimate Spider-Man run, for the stuff that he did on Avengers and New Avengers when he was writing those titles.
Haven't read any of that.
So his type of writing just speaks to me. I feel immediately at home when I read a Bendis title.
I think there is something to be said for the fact that this was a really action-packed issue. Nobody should be able to call it boring. I mean, really, if you have this many people die in one issue, this many fight sequences, setting up the whole, Western thing, you just walk through town murdering people, basically, and somebody's still kind of yawning through the last few pages. I don't know. Maybe it's just not for me. I'm willing to give it another issue, though. If for no other reason than we actually had a supplier issue and we missed one. So it's on order. I'll go ahead and give it a shot and we'll see where it goes.
Okay. So my last choice for bottom of the barrel is Catwoman by Valentine. For me, the art didn't really particularly speak to me here, and I'm just picking this up and it feels like I've just missed the boat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know what's going on here, so nothing catches me and draws me in with this title.
I mentioned in the issue that we actually reviewed this that coming into this series I would highly suggest starting at 35. So seeing as, you're coming on as a new reader in 41, is this basically a new story arc? Yes, but are the issues in 35 to 40 absolutely crucial to what's going on here? Yeah. So I can't say that I'm really surprised, even though I love it because I did read those issues and I know who the people are and stuff like that. If I didn't, I would probably feel lost and just over my head and bored.
Yeah, that pretty much describes my reaction to this comic. I am willing to give it a little more to see if I can get into it and sort of understand what's happening with a few more issues. I'll trust your judgment on this one that it is good once I get in here and understand what's happening.
Valentine, if you're watching this, I really like this comic, but it's hard for new readers to get into. And I know that's a tough line to walk because you want to have your story your way and you want to tell these long form, just epic journeys of your characters and everything. But it's, I mean, if somebody misses one issue, they're just screwed. You know, it's hard.
My suggestion to Valentine, who's obviously watching this, is right here, this first page. Take a look at what Mark Waid does. Do that.
It's good advice, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've gone through our top and bottom picks for the last 4 weeks. We're going to be adding some titles this month. I think we're only dropping one for sure. Mm-hmm. My original theme going into this video specifically was, where the hell is Big Trouble in Little China? Because that was like my number one pull list pick. I was like, we have to do this comic. There's no way I will do this if we're not doing this comic. It's my favorite title to read every month. Unfortunately, it's gotten pushed back and pushed back. It's coming out next week, so I feel safe.
Fantastic.
With that. But let's talk about some potential issues that we could swap in. My first pick, because I'm trying to escalate the comic book Kurt Russell franchise to the height that it deserves, is Escape from New York. This is another one of my favorite comics. It is humorous, not in the same way as Big Trouble in Little China. Big Trouble in Little China is very silly, over the top. It's self-aware of being so. Most of the humor in this comic comes from how badass this guy is and the manner in which he acquires cigarettes.
Okay.
Which I think is just genius.
I'm in.
They have this joke about just him getting cigarettes or being pissed about cigarettes in some form or another for the whole series so far. There's been some serious cigarette action in every issue, and I'm down for that.
So his cigarettes are his version of Indiana Jones's hat.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think I even showed you there's a panel where in the first arc, he's in Florida, and then he finally manages to escape from Florida. Go figure. But he's swimming across the water back to land, and he's got a pack of cigarettes in his teeth, like while he's like swimming back, because he doesn't want them to get wet.
Okay, so that's one of our choices, Escape from New York. I'm going to go ahead and sort of highlight a couple of choices here. These are both Jeff Lemire titles. We have Bloodshot Reborn, as well as Descender. Descender's a Dustin Nguyen artwork, which I think is gorgeous looking.
It's so pretty. Watercolor. I mean, obviously you can't see the colors too well, but just everything's very soft and muted. It's just gorgeous looking. And neither of us really know anything about this. I've been collecting a few of the back ones, sort of as a title that I gave a little bit of time to get its footing. But I know that it's set in the future, and I know that there are robots. So future plus robots plus watercolors, I'm kind of in.
Right.
On this
Plus
one.
Jeff Lemire. We're
Plus
both
Jeff
Jeff Lemire
Lemire
fans.
Yeah, it's kind of a sin, honestly, that we didn't have a Jeff Lemire title last month. Mm-hmm. We really should have.
Mm-hmm. So our other choice here is Bloodshot Reborn, which also, do you know much about this title?
I know that this was one of the original Valiant titles that did really well. Since it's been relaunched, I know nothing about it.
Right.
I've thumbed through it a few times. Again, Jeff Lemire, I'm sure it's great.
Mm-hmm. The art in this one is a little more standard. This looks more like your average Big Two sort of book. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very Photoshop or Illustrator sort of art in here.
Quasi 3D, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a Valiant title, which I find interesting. I don't have a lot of experience with Valiant titles.
I don't either. I know they got really big for a few years, and then by the time I really got into comics, they were gone.
Yeah.
So
this is definitely a contender for us as well. That's, again, Bloodshot Reborn.
Another one of my top picks is Jupiter's Circle by Mark Millar. You never really know what you're getting into with a Millar title, such is the case here. The cover, I mean, you would guess it's pretty bland. It's probably about superheroes. There's one right there. Shit. All right. And then in the first issue, there's a huge gay sex scandal. In the next issue, there's a superhero who falls in love with some 20-year-old waitress and decides to leave his wife and kids. It's all kind of set back in the 50s. It's a very real kind of superhero book. The conflicts that they're facing in here are never space aliens or anything like that. Like, that's kind of a backseat to their real human sort of problems that they have. You know, maintaining relationships while they have this secret identity and maintaining this moral and ethical code, you know, that they're supposed to be responsible for and representing the country and such. I think it's brilliant.
Okay. For me, Mark Millar, I'm never quite sure if he's a genius or a moron. I can never decide. Every time I read one of his comics, I think, man, that was really brilliant. I read the next one, and I think, well, maybe he's not doing this on purpose.
Yeah.
So I'm always interested in his work. I usually try to read what he's doing. I don't always get through everything. Mm-hmm. But I've loved some of the things he's done in the past. And with this one in particular, Jupiter's Circle, I really like the artwork in it.
Wilfredo Torres is the name of the artist.
It's this very...
It reminds me of Invincible.
Yes, yeah, it very much reminds me of Invincible. It's very sort of clean lines, mm-hmm. Very almost two-dimensional art, with the occasional... occasionally it also reminds me of Prince Valiant.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've seen that a few times. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dad was into that when he was little. Apparently it's been around forever. Yeah, it reminds me of those old sort of long-form comic strips with that sort of middling artwork where you can tell they spent more time with it than you're going to see on Family Circle, but not enough time to do like a normal comic book style work. I feel like this is hearkening back to that in a way as well. That being said, again, storyline, dialogue, I would not liken to Prince Valiant whatsoever. I don't think. Yeah, you'd already easily see that in Prince Valiant. The last title that I think we should think quite a bit about, and it bums me out because this is a week one, and I think we already had a very strong week one last month. But there's a new Brian K. Vaughan title coming out called We Stand on Guard, again set in the future, and I believe it's about the United States invading Canada.
Yes.
Which automatically I think is brilliant. Did you ever watch wrestling when you were a kid?
No, but regardless, Canada deserves it.
There was this whole year-long storyline going on where Bret Hart and his brothers and sisters were sort of just insisting that there was this feud between Canada and America, and they would come out every week and just trash talk America and talk about how it was shaped like a big toilet and stuff like that. And he was the most hated wrestler forever, which is amazing because Bret Hart used to be sort of almost Canadian Hulk Hogan. Say your prayers and take your vitamins and check out my cool sunglasses. Yeah. They would do a show in Canada, and it was like he was the patron saint coming home, and they all everybody had Bret Hart gear on and just absolutely loved him, and it made you almost think that there was some sort of conflict between Canada and America as a 7-year-old watching professional wrestling. So if I understand you correctly, you want to read the new Brian K. Vaughan because of Bret Hart. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I like Brian K. Vaughan all right too.
He's okay.
He's no Bret Hart. But
yeah, for me, anytime I see Brian K. Vaughan, I'm immediately in to at least give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I've been dissatisfied with anything of his that I've read. Even Brian K. Vaughan's Swamp Thing, which if you've read Brian K. Vaughan and Swamp Thing, you would think, what the hell? He does an awesome job.
Okay, well that does it for our pull list review of June. Go ahead and comment down below if there's anything you think we should add to our list. We do have some space and we do have some time. If you disagree with any of our choices here, go ahead and let us know that as well. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye.